You ever notice how success can make people forget? Forget the struggle, forget the people, forget the small beginnings that made them who they are. But here's the truth, no matter how high you climb, you never really escape where you came from. You carry it with you. It's in the way you talk, the way you work, the way you push through when things get hard. For Steve, standing in front of his mom, as old house wasn't just a trip down memory lane, it was a moment of awakening. That old place with its cracked paint and faded porch wasn't just a building. It was the foundation of everything that came after. It was where faith had to be stronger than the fear of failing. It was where every no he ever heard pushed him closer to a yes he hadn't yet seen. And that's something we all need to remember, because when life finally gives you the things you've been chasing, it's easy to think you did it all by yourself. But that little house, that's the reminder that you didn't. You had help, you had people who believed when you didn't, you had lessons that came wrapped in struggle, you had love that looked like sacrifice. That's where you came from. And if you ever forget that, you lose the very thing that made you strong enough to stand where you are now. You see, remembering where you came from isn't about living in the past. It's about staying grounded in gratitude. It's about honoring the story that built your strength. Steve didn't break down because he missed the house. He broke down because he remembered what it took to leave it. Every wall, every step, every memory had a piece of his mother in it. Her prayers still echoed in those rooms. Her voice still whispered in that kitchen. That's the kind of place that never leaves you, even when you leave it. And we've all got a version of that place. Maybe it's not a house, maybe it's a person, a season, a struggle that shaped you. Whatever it is, you've got to hold it close. Because when you forget your roots, you start believing the lie that success is just about hard work and talent. But the truth, it's also about grace. It's about those moments when you were too tired to keep going, but somehow didn't stop. It's about the prayers you didn't even know were being said for you. It's about the foundation that was laid long before you ever dreamed of standing where you are. Steve looked at that house and saw everything he thought he'd left behind, but in that moment, he realized he'd been carrying it all along. The lessons, the love, the faith, they were the compass that guided him through every storm. And that's what remembering where you came from does. It keeps you humble when life tries to make you proud. It keeps you kind when success tempts you to forget empathy. It reminds you that you're not self-made, your story made. You are the product of every late night, every quiet prayer, every act of love that no one saw, but you felt every day of your life. When Steve broke down, it wasn't sadness. It was reverence. He didn't see that old house as a symbol of poverty or struggle. He saw it as proof that he started with enough. Because when you come from nothing, every step forward is a blessing. Every open door is a miracle. And sometimes life takes you full circle just to show you that you were never really alone in the climb. You were guided. You were prepared. You were being built for the moment you're living right now. So, never let success make you forget your starting line. Because remembering where you came from doesn't hold you back, it keeps you honest. And gratitude, my friend, that's what keeps your heart full long after the applause fades. Gratitude hits different when you've been through something. When you've had days where you didn't know how you'd make it. When you've had moments where your prayers felt like they were bouncing off the ceiling, and somehow, some way, you still made it out. That's what Steve felt when he stood there, looking at his mama's old house. It wasn't pride. It wasn't success. It was gratitude. That deep, quiet kind of thankfulness that doesn't need words because your whole body already feels it. The kind that humbles you, that breaks you down in the best way, because you realize how far you've come and how much you didn't do it alone. You see, success can make noise, but gratitude brings peace. Steve's not crying because he's sad. He's crying because he knows what it took to get here. The nights of doubt, the laughter in the middle of struggle, the lessons hidden in every setback, they all come rushing back when you stand in the very place you once dreamed of leaving. Gratitude isn't about saying thank you for the good. It's about recognizing the good that came from what once felt bad. It's about realizing that even the pain had a purpose. That's something we forget in this world of constant comparison. We chase the next big thing, the next achievement, the next applause. But when you strip all that away, what really matters is your ability to look back and say, I'm thankful. Because gratitude doesn't live in the spotlight, it lives in the quiet. It's the moment you walk into your old neighborhood and remember the kid who swore they'd make it out. It's the moment you realize that what once broke you actually built you. It's standing in front of that house, that job, that memory, and knowing that what once was your biggest burden became your biggest blessing. Steve didn't stand there thinking about his success, his fame, his fortune, none of that. He stood there thinking about his mama, the woman who prayed him through storms she never even saw. He stood there remembering that every yes in his life was born from 100 no's. Gratitude, when it's real, doesn't make you puff your chest, it makes you bow your head. Because you recognize that everything you've got now was once something you begged for. And maybe that's why gratitude feels so heavy sometimes. Because when you start to really look back, you see the fingerprints of grace all over your story. The times you almost gave up but didn't. The doors that closed that forced you down the right path. The people who showed up just when you needed them, and the people who left so you could finally grow. Gratitude makes you feel everything at once, the pain, the joy, the peace, the disbelief. It's emotional because it's real. We spend so much time chasing more that we forget how to appreciate enough. But the truth is, enough is sacred. Gratitude doesn't mean settling. It means seeing what's already in front of you as a blessing instead of a burden. That's why Steve broke down, because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't chasing anything. He was just still. He was standing in the middle of a full circle moment, overwhelmed by how much life had given him after taking so much away. Gratitude changes the way you see success. It shifts the question from why me to why not me. It takes your victories and turns them into reminders. It reminds you that even when you didn't have much, you had enough. That's what makes gratitude hit harder than success, because success fades, but gratitude stays. It keeps your heart soft when the world tries to harden it. It keeps you human when life wants to make you a machine. When Steve stood there crying, he wasn't broken. He was whole. Because gratitude doesn't take away what you've been through, it just helps you see it for what it really was. A blessing in disguise. You know, people talk about pain like it's something you just have to survive, something to get past, get over, or leave behind. But the truth is, pain is proof you've grown. It's not the enemy, it's the evidence. When Steve stood in front of his mama's house and those tears started to fall, that wasn't weakness showing up, that was strength remembering where it came from. Because the pain that once tried to break you becomes the very thing that builds your character, shapes your faith, and teaches you how to stand when life knocks you down again. See, growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in those nights when you can't sleep because your mind won't stop replaying every failure. It happens when you keep showing up, even though nothing seems to be working. It happens when you want to quit, but something deep inside whispers, not yet. That's what Steve saw when he looked at that house. Every bit of pain that used to hurt him had turned into a lesson that now helped him. And the tears weren't from sadness, they were from understanding. Understanding that without the struggle, he wouldn't have become the man standing there. We don't always realize it while we're in it, but pain is one of the greatest teachers we'll ever have. It introduces you to yourself. It strips away who you thought you were so you can finally see who you really are. The nights when Steve didn't know how he was going to make it, the times he failed, the moments he felt forgotten, those weren't detours, they were directions. They were shaping him, stretching him, preparing him. Every disappointment was planting a seed that one day would grow into wisdom. And isn't that something we all share? Those moments that felt like endings but turned out to be beginnings. Pain doesn't ask permission, it just shows up. It changes you, but if you let it, it'll also refine you. It'll teach you to value peace over pride, faith over fear, and patience over control. It humbles you, but it also strengthens you. Because the very thing that once made you cry is often the same thing that helps you help somebody else later. When Steve looked back at his past, he didn't see failure anymore, he saw a foundation. That's the power of growth. You start to realize that what used to hurt you doesn't own you anymore. It becomes a part of your story, not the whole story. And once you reach that place, you stop resenting the hard parts. You start respecting them. Because they made you deeper, more compassionate, more aware of just how far you've come. Pain also reminds you that you're alive, that you still care. You can't grow numb and expect to evolve. You've got to feel it all, the loss, the disappointment, the loneliness, because those feelings push you toward change. Pain breaks you open so truth can finally get in. And when that happens, you start to see that it wasn't there to destroy you. It was there to awaken you. Steve's breakdown in that moment wasn't about sadness. It was about realization, realizing that everything he went through had meaning, that the nights he spent wondering if he'd ever make it were the same nights that gave him the strength to stand where he is now. It's wild, isn't it, how the things that once made you question your worth end up proving it. Pain doesn't disappear when you reach success. It just transforms. It softens into wisdom. It becomes gratitude in disguise. That's what Steve felt, not pain, but the echo of it. And sometimes that's enough to bring you to your knees, not because you're broken, but because you finally understand why you had to be. There's a moment in every person's journey when success doesn't feel like your own anymore. It starts to belong to the people who helped you get there, the ones who carried you when you couldn't carry yourself. When Steve stood there, staring at his mom's old house, it wasn't just a home he was looking at. It was her face, her voice, her prayers. It was every moment she believed in him when he didn't even have the courage to believe in himself. That kind of love doesn't fade. It lives on in the walls, in the memories, in the lessons that never left him. And that's the thing about people who love you unconditionally. They don't just give you advice or encouragement. They give you belief. They see something in you long before you see it in yourself. Steve's mama didn't need proof of who he'd become. She saw the man inside the boy even when the world didn't. That's a kind of faith that changes everything. Because when someone believes in you like that, it plants a seed you can't ignore. It keeps you going when the world tells you you're not enough. It keeps you reaching for something greater because you can't let that kind of love go to waste. We all have someone like that, or maybe we had them. The person who showed up when no one else did, the one who told you to keep going when you wanted to quit. Maybe it was a parent, maybe a teacher, a friend, or even a stranger who saw your light before you did. Those people become the silent architects of your story, and sometimes it's not until you make it to the other side that you realize just how much of your strength was borrowed from their faith. Standing there, Steve wasn't crying because of guilt or sadness. He was crying because he finally understood. He saw how his mama's sacrifices built his foundation. Every meal she skipped so he could eat. Every prayer she whispered when he was lost. Every time she told him to hold his head up, even when life kept knocking it down. That was love in its purest form. And when he saw that house, he saw every ounce of it come flooding back. That's when success hits different, because it's not about what you have, it's about who made it possible. Sometimes, honoring the people who believed in you isn't about doing something grand. It's about living in a way that reflects the values they taught you. It's in the kindness you show, the integrity you keep, the humility you carry. Steve didn't need to tell his mama thank you. His life was the thank you. Every accomplishment, every stage, every time he used his platform to inspire someone else, that was her legacy moving through him. because love like that doesn't die. It just changes form. It moves from their hands into yours. And it's important to remember that even if those people aren't here anymore, their belief still lives in you. It still whispers in your heart when you doubt yourself. It still reminds you that you're capable, that you're chosen, that you're enough. That's why when Steve broke down, it wasn't from sadness, it was from realization. He realized that no amount of fame or money could ever measure up to the worth of a mother's belief, because belief like that is rare. It's sacred, so when you find yourself in those moments of success, take a second to look back. Think of the people who saw you before the world did. Say their name, honor their love, live in a way that keeps their spirit alive. Because at the end of it all, the greatest way to honor those who believed in you first is to become everything they knew you could be. You can have everything you ever dreamed of: the house, the cars, the recognition, and still feel a kind of emptiness that money can't touch. That's what people don't always understand about success. It looks good on the outside, but it only feels good on the inside when your soul is still intact. When Steve stood there, looking at that little house, he realized something deeper than all the achievements and awards could ever teach him. Success means nothing if you lose who you are in the process. Because what good is reaching the top if you can't recognize yourself when you get there? That house reminded him of a time when he had nothing but faith, when dreams were bigger than his circumstances, and when every little win felt like a miracle. And it's funny, sometimes the more you get, the easier it becomes to forget that version of yourself. You start measuring your worth by what you have instead of who you've become. But that's not success. True success isn't about what you accumulate. It's about what you protect: your values, your kindness, your peace, your purpose. The things that can't be bought, can't be faked, and can't be replaced. Standing there, Steve wasn't just remembering his past, he was reconnecting with his soul. He saw that even after everything life had given him, what truly mattered were the things that couldn't fit in a bank account. The sound of his mama's laughter, the smell of Sunday breakfast, the lessons she taught him about hard work and faith, those were the riches that shaped him long before fame ever found him. And that's the part that humbles you. Because you realize the moments that mean the most usually come from the times when you had the least. See, the world will try to sell you a version of success that's loud, shiny, and quick. But real success is quiet. It's peace when you go to bed at night. It's joy that doesn't depend on what you own. It's the ability to sit in stillness and know you didn't have to compromise your soul to get where you are. Steve's breakdown wasn't about regret. It was about realization. Realizing that he didn't need to keep proving anything. He'd already made it, not because of what he had, but because of who he'd become. And that's something we all need to remember. Life will give you opportunities, yes, but it will also test you to see if you can hold on to yourself while chasing them. Success without soul is just noise. It might impress people for a while, but it won't fulfill you, because fulfillment doesn't come from applause. It comes from alignment. It comes from knowing that who you are privately still matches who you pretend to be publicly. It comes from standing in front of your past and being proud of the person looking back. When Steve looked at that house, he didn't see lack, he saw legacy. He saw the strength it took to come from nothing and still have something money could never buy: character. And that's the real win in life. The cars get old, the house loses its shine, the fame fades, but the soul, if you protect it, only grows richer. It's what allows you to walk through life with peace instead of pride, compassion instead of comparison, gratitude instead of greed. So yeah, success will open doors, but it's your soul that keeps you standing when they close. And when you've seen both sides of life, the struggle and the success, you realize the only thing truly worth keeping is your heart. Because at the end of it all, it's not about how high you climbed. It's about how deeply you stayed human. There are certain moments in life that stop you cold, moments that don't just touch your heart, they shake your spirit. Moments that make you realize everything you went through, everything you cried over, everything you questioned, was leading you right here. That's what it was like for Steve when he stood in front of his mama's house. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was divine. It was one of those full circle moments where life whispers, "See, I told you I had a plan." And in that quiet, emotional space, everything that once felt unfair suddenly starts to make sense. He wasn't just looking at the house, he was looking at the story. Every disappointment, every detour, every prayer that felt unanswered at the time. They all led to this moment. That's what a full circle moment does. It connects the dots between your pain and your purpose. It makes you realize that what you thought was working against you was actually working for you all along. When Steve broke down, it wasn't sadness. It was surrender. It was that release that comes when you finally understand that life wasn't punishing you, it was preparing you. And I think we all reach that point at some time in our lives, that moment when you look back and think, now I get it. The heartbreak that broke you, it made you stronger. The job you didn't get, it cleared space for something better. The doors that closed, they weren't rejection, they were redirection. It's only when you've lived enough life that you realize the pain had purpose, the struggle had timing, and the waiting had meaning. You just couldn't see it then. But when you stand in your full circle moment, it's like God lifts the veil, and suddenly, everything that was confusing becomes clear. For Steve, that house wasn't just wood and walls, it was the beginning of every blessing. That's where the lessons were planted, where faith was tested, where strength was born. Seeing it again wasn't just a trip back home, it was a moment of revelation. He saw what his mama had seen all along, that the boy who used to dream inside that little house was destined to do something bigger than his circumstances. That's the beauty of full circle moments. They don't just remind you of where you came from. They show you how far grace has carried you. Sometimes life takes you back to the very place that broke you, not to hurt you again, but to show you that it no longer has power over you. That's what that moment was for Steve. It was a reminder that he survived. That every tear, every trial, every lonely night had led him exactly where he needed to be. And that realization hits hard, because you finally understand that none of it was wasted. The pain had a purpose. The loss had a lesson. The waiting had a reason. When life brings you full circle, it's not by accident. It's God's way of saying, I didn't forget about you. It's His way of showing you that the prayers you thought went unanswered were actually being built behind the scenes. It's a reminder that timing is never yours to control, it's something you learn to trust. And when you finally see that plan unfold, all you can do is stand there humbled, speechless, and in awe of how far you've come. That's what Steve felt in that moment, the weight of every struggle, colliding with the beauty of every blessing. It wasn't just an emotional breakdown, it was a spiritual breakthrough. Because when life finally brings you back to where it all began, and you see everything you once prayed for standing right in front of you, all that's left to say is thank you.